Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to sort through the noise and find the insights that, well, really matter.
Glad to be here.
So today we're diving into something pretty fundamental. How does someone actually achieve greatness? And to kick things off, let's think about two absolute legends, Tiger Woods and Roger Federer.
Ah, yes. Great comparison.
Just take a second, think about what comes to mind when you hear their names, their stories.
It's a perfect place to start because, well, their paths look almost like polar opposites, right? And
Yeah.
people use them to argue completely different things about success.
Exactly. You take Tiger Woods, his origin story is practically legendary. 6 months old, balancing on his dad's hand.
Yeah,
7 months, he's got a putter in his walker. Then he's on national TV at 2 years old.
it's wild. And his father, Earl, wasn't just teaching him golf strokes.
No, not at all. He was prepping him for the media spotlight, mapping out this grand destiny, even saying Tiger would have a bigger impact than Nelson Mandela.
That's the ultimate head start narrative, isn't it? Intense focus, super early, specialization from day one, practically.
Right, the cult of the Head Start. But then you have Roger Federer.
Totally different vibe. His mom was actually a tennis coach.
But she didn't coach him.
Exactly. She said he just, tried out every weird stroke and never hit the ball normally.
Huh. So instead, his childhood was like a buffet of sports.
Pretty much. Squash, skiing, wrestling, swimming, skateboarding, basketball, handball, table tennis, badminton, soccer.
Oh, okay.
And he actually credited that variety later on. Said it was key for his athleticism, his hand-eye coordination.
And his parents weren't pushy about tennis.
Nope. They were more pulley, as one writer put it, encouraging him to try stuff, sample things, see what clicked. He only really zeroed in on tennis when he was getting into his teens.
Okay, so here's the tension. We've got this dominant idea, Tiger's path. Early, relentless focus, the whole 10,000 hours thing. That's the way, right?
That's the common wisdom, yeah.
But then the research often points somewhere else. It's kind of surprising. For people who eventually become truly elite, researchers often find this sampling period.
Mm-hmm. A time where they explore different things, often pretty unstructured, before they specialize later on.
And what's crucial, I think, is that this Roger path, it's not just some weird exception.
No, it seems to be really important, especially now in our, complicated modern world. It helps in ways we often just don't see.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Let's try to unpack what's really going on with expertise, with learning, with success. Let's move past those simple, maybe too simple stories.
Sounds good. Where should we start with why that Head Start idea is so appealing?
Yeah, let's look at the lore of the Head Start and maybe why it can be a bit misleading sometimes.
Well, it's easy to see why those prodigy stories grab us, right? They seem to offer such a clear roadmap, like do this and success is guaranteed.
Absolutely. And it's not just Tiger. Think about the Polgar sisters in chess.
Oh yeah, Laszlo Polgar's experiment.
Right. He deliberately set out to prove he could raise geniuses through intense early chess training. And, well, it kind of worked. Susan won the under 11 title at age 4.
4, that's incredible. And she became women's world champion. Her sisters, Sophia and Judith, also became grandmasters.
So these stories, Tigers, the Polgars, they get amplified everywhere. Pop culture, bestseller books.
Like talent is overrated.
Exactly. Promoting this idea, specialize early, practice deliberately. That's the universal key.
But, as we saw with Federer, the reality is often messier, more nuanced. Studies on elite athletes often show they actually spent less time early on practicing their main sport.
Less time, really.
Yeah, instead they were out there sampling, trying different sports, building broad physical skill, figuring out what they actually liked, what they were good at before they doubled down. This idea of late specialization seems pretty common at the top.
And you said it's not just sports.
Right. Even classical music, which feels like the ultimate early start domain. Research shows most top students actually played like 3 instruments, often 4 or 5.
Huh.
They only really cranked up the practice hours once they found an instrument that they really connected with, or just clicked for them.
Wow. Any famous examples?
Well, Sviatoslav Richter, one of the absolute greatest pianists of the 20th century, didn't start formal lessons until he was 22.
22. Okay.
Or Steve Nash, 2-time NBA MVP, didn't even own a basketball till he was 13.
13. So the takeaway is
The insight seems to be that often the activity itself kind of drives the practitioner. You can't just force that rage to master, as they call it.
right.
Maybe exposing kids to a bunch of things, letting them find that spark themselves is actually a better bet long term than pushing them down one narrow path too soon.
This difference, this kind of fork in the road, leads us to a really key idea for understanding how skills develop. It's about the learning environment itself.
Ah, the difference between kind and wicked environments.
Exactly. Explain kind environments first.
Sure, psychologist Robin Hogarth talked about this. Kind environments are domains where patterns repeat reliably, the rules are clear, and crucially, the feedback you get is fast and accurate.
Like golf. You hit the ball, you see it land, instant feedback.
Precisely. Golf, chess. Maybe a firefighter dealing with a typical house fire they've seen many times. In these situations, that focused, deliberate practice really works well. It builds reliable expertise.
Okay, makes sense. But then, the wicked ones.
Right. Daniel Kahneman explored these a lot. Wicked environments are, well, the opposite. The rules may be fuzzy or missing. Patterns might not repeat or they're hard to spot. And the feedback, this is key. It can be slow, wrong, or even worse, it can actually reinforce bad decisions.
Reinforce bad decisions. How?
Well, this is where experience can actually be a trap. There's this crazy story about a New York City doctor back in the day, famous for diagnosing typhoid fever just by feeling patients' tongues.
By feeling their tongues. Seriously.
Seriously. And he was often right, even before other symptoms showed up. But it turned out his success was because he was an asymptomatic carrier. He was actually spreading it.
Oh my God. So his experience kept telling him he was brilliant at diagnosis.
Exactly. When really he was just, as the report said, a more productive carrier
Yeah.
than Typhoid Mary. His intuition felt reliable, but for a completely perverse reason. The feedback loop was wicked.
Wow. Okay, so the big lesson here is that whether your experience actually makes you better.
It depends entirely on the domain in question. Narrow experience is great for chess, but it might make you worse at predicting, say, financial markets, or adapting to totally new situations, or understanding complex social dynamics.
Context is everything, way more than we usually think.
Which brings us to another really interesting shift. How our thinking itself has changed, and what that means for learning.
You mean the Flynn effect?
Exactly. James Flynn's discovery that IQ scores have been rising for decades all around the world, and not just in factual knowledge, but specifically in abstract thinking.
So we're getting better at what exactly?
And solving problems on the fly, without needing a pre-learned recipe. At thinking conceptually, classifying things, seeing relationships.
It's like we've put on scientific spectacles, as the author puts it.
Yeah.
Huh.
We don't just see a dog and a whale, we see mammals. We group things using abstract categories based on, underlying principles, not just surface appearance. It's a huge mental shift from how people thought even a century or two ago.
But here's the kicker. Flynn himself was actually kind of disappointed.
He was, because despite this amazing new capacity for abstract thought, he found that higher education often defaults back to narrow specialization.
So it's not really developing that flexible, transferable thinking.
Often not as much as it could. He found surprisingly little link between, say, GPA at top universities and broad critical thinking skills. Like biology majors were great at biology questions, but struggled if the problem wasn't framed in familiar biological terms.
Same for chemistry students.
Yeah, bright students, obviously, but they had trouble applying basic scientific reasoning outside of chemistry problems.
So our schools are maybe teaching us what to think inside our little docs, but not how to think across different boxes.
That seems to be Flynn's concern. And for you listening, a good way to think about this abstract skill is using Fermi problems.
Ah, yeah. Like estimate how many piano tuners there are in Chicago.
Exactly. You don't know the answer, but you can reason it out. You estimate the population, households, how many might own pianos, how often they need tuning, how many tunings one person can do. You build a logical chain using concepts.
It's thinking with models, not just facts.
Right. And in today's world, which is often more wicked than kind, that ability to reason conceptually, to learn without direct experience by connecting ideas across contexts, is becoming paramount.
Especially as automation takes over the more repetitive kind tasks.
Precisely. Our human edge is that flexible, abstract thinking.
Okay, so if broad conceptual thinking is key, how do we actually get better at learning that way? Because we usually think learning should be easy, right? Smooth, fast.
Yeah, that's the intuition. But the research points, again, somewhere kind of counterintuitive,
Yeah.
towards something called desirable difficulties.
Desirable difficulties sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, but it means obstacles or challenges that actually make the learning process harder, slower, maybe more frustrating in the moment,
Okay.
but they lead to learning that's much more durable, deeper, and more flexible in the long run.
Give me an example.
Okay, contrast math classrooms in the US and Japan. Studies found that in the U.S., teachers often jump in with too many hints when students get stuck on a hard problem.
Trying to be helpful, presumably?
Of course.
Hmm.
But what it does is turn a making connections problem, one that requires real conceptual struggle, into a using procedures problem, where the student just hunts for the right rule to apply.
Ah, so they find the answer, but maybe don't grasp the underlying concept as deeply?
Exactly. Whereas in Japan, it's more common to let the class really wrestle with a tough making connections problem, maybe for the whole period. Lots of struggle, maybe no neat solution by the end.
Sounds frustrating.
In the short term, maybe, but it fosters a much deeper understanding of the concepts involved. That struggle is the learning.
And this isn't just for humans?
Nope. Nate Cornell did a study with rhesus macaques, teaching them picture lists. Some got hints during training, some didn't.
And the ones with hints learned faster?
Initially, yes, but on test day, the monkeys who got more hints actually performed worse.
Wow.
The group trained without hints. Their initial learning was slow, full of errors, but their long-term retention was significantly better.
So easy come, easy go learning.
Sort of. It shows that immediate performance is actually a really poor indicator of whether real deep learning has occurred.
This ties into other learning concepts too, right? Like spacing out practice.
Absolutely. The spacing effect, or distributed practice, basically leaving gaps between study sessions for the same material, is way more effective than cramming.
Why does that work?
Because struggling to recall information after a break actually strengthens the memory trace. There's a study with Spanish vocabulary. People tested a month after learning retained 250% more 8 years later than those tested immediately after learning.
8 years later, just from that initial spacing.
Yep. That desirable difficulty of retrieval practice makes a huge difference for long-term retention.
Okay, one more big example of this. The Air Force Academy study. Huge data set, over 10,000 cadets in Calculus Vert. They looked at how students did later on in more advanced maths and science courses based on which professor they had for Calc Y.
And what did they find?
The professors whose students initially struggled more got lower grades on Calc Y tests, maybe even gave the professor harsher teaching evaluations.
Oh,
Those students actually performed significantly better in their subsequent harder courses. So the tough professors were actually teaching more effectively for the long haul.
it seems so. They were fostering deep learning. Conversely, the professors whose students aced Calc I right away, their students often showed a fade-out effect later. They hadn't built that deep, flexible understanding.
So the takeaway here is don't shy away from struggle and learning. It's often where the real magic happens.
Exactly. The best learning road is often slow and effortful. What we really want isn't just good current performance, but far transfer,
Far transfer, meaning
meaning knowledge that's flexible, that you can actually apply effectively in totally new situations, different domains, not just repeating what you learned in the exact same context.
and that ability, that far transfer, seems linked to broader thinking, right? Drawing connections.
Yes, very much so. Which brings us to the power of analogy and what's sometimes called the outsider advantage.
Oh, wait, let's get into that. How does broad thinking fuel breakthroughs?
Well, think about Johannes Kepler. He basically had to invent astrophysics to figure out the orbit of Mars. There was no existing playbook.
So, what did he do?
He drew on analogies from completely different domains: smells, heat, light, magnetism, boats moving in water. All these distant analogies helped him conceptualize the idea of forces acting across space, like gravity. He built a new field by borrowing ideas from far afield.
That's relational thinking, isn't it? Seeing deep connections between things that look different on the surface.
Exactly. Deidre Gentner's work highlights this. Simple surface analogies work fine if you're just repeating a known pattern. But for truly novel, wicked problems, you need those deep, structural, sometimes distant analogies.
Like the famous radiation problem, how to destroy a tumor without harming surrounding tissue.
Right. People solve it much more easily if they first hear analogies about a general capturing a fortress by sending small groups of soldiers down multiple roads, or a fire chief putting out a shed fire with multiple small hoses. Superficially different, structurally similar.
And this outsider perspective, looking beyond the immediate details, it's powerful in practical ways too.
Hugely. Think about problem solving in companies.
Yeah.
Alf Bingham at Eli Lilly, he had a PhD in organic chemistry.
An insider.
Right. But he noticed that some of the most creative solutions to tough chemistry problems came from people using knowledge from completely different areas, like using cream of tartar, something from baking, to solve a molecule synthesis issue,
Huh.
or a lawyer thinking about tear gas helped with another problem. It led him to start Incentive.
The platform where companies post tough problems for anyone to solve.
Exactly. And often, the winners are people with zero specific background in that exact field. They bring a fresh perspective, unburdened by the standard assumptions.
It's like that saying, knowledge is a double-edged sword.
It really is.
Mhm.
It lets you see certain solutions, but it can blind you to others. It creates an Einstein effect, getting stuck in familiar ways of thinking.
There are so many examples. Gunpei Yokoi at Nintendo.
Lateral thinking with withered technology. Love that phrase.
Me too. Instead of chasing the newest, fastest tech, he'd take old, cheap, well understood technology, withered tech, and find completely new, creative uses for it.
Like the Game Boy. Low-tech screen, simple hardware.
But brilliant game design and a totally new way to play. He wasn't stuck in functional fixedness, seeing tech only for its original purpose.
It connects to Freeman Dyson's analogy, too, the birds and frogs.
Right. Science needs deep diving specialists, the frogs, but it also needs visionary birds who soar above, see the bigger picture, and connect different ponds.
And Dyson's worry was that we're breeding too many frogs and not enough birds. Everyone's hyper-specialized, maybe losing the ability to integrate or adapt.
We see this at innovative companies too, like 3M Andy Outerkirk inventing that amazing multi-layer optical fill.
Yeah, the stuff in everything from phone screens to glitter, a multi-billion-dollar invention.
And his insight came from looking at a simple plastic water bottle, something the deep subject matter experts missed because, as he said, they didn't know the adjacent stuff.
It seems the peak value of narrow specialists might have actually been back around 1985. Since then, information has become so widely available that the advantage is shifting towards those connectors, the integrators, the Yokoi-like thinkers,
The T-shaped people, right. Deep in one area, but broad across others.
or even pie-shaped, deep in two areas, plus the breadth. People who can connect the dots because they have more dots to connect.
This really challenges the idea that deeper is always better. Maybe broader is the new deeper.
In many ways, yes, especially when facing complex, changing problems. Look at the classic Simon Ehrlich bet.
Ah, the biologist versus the economist.
Right. Paul Ehrlich, a top butterfly specialist, used biological models to predict mass starvation from population growth. Narrow focus. Julian Simon, an economist, looked at the bigger picture, human ingenuity, markets, substitution, and argued we'd innovate our way out of resource scarcity.
And Simon won the bet, famously.
He did. It's a stark warning about the dangers of narrow expertise ignoring broader principles. Sometimes the more famous the expert, the less accurate their predictions are outside their specific niche.
So, the takeaway for our listeners in this